Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 2 of our discussion about who is your best friend. And it's the most important relationship that we have, which is the relationship with ourselves. In episode 1, we briefly outlined the two voices that are normally going back in our mind as the opponent, the voice that is challenging us, and the voice of our soul, the kind of seemingly quieter voice that really does have our best interest in mind. And today with Momo, Rachel, Mike, and Ruth, we're going to open up the discussion a little further so we can all identify for ourselves and everybody at home watching, what is the voice of the opponent? What does that sound like? And what is the voice of the soul? So Ruth, I'm gonna start with you and the story that you shared last time about your best friend and your boyfriend. Can you share with us just a little bit about how that went? Did you ever have an intuition that something was going on? Was there a voice inside? Was there a stressful feeling or a tug inside about when you were around them? How did that go?
Yeah, it started one day. I don't know. We were like at a party and like I saw them talking like normal. And then like I noticed a little bit different kind of talk, like more a closer talk, we can say. So that's like my first. I said, I don't know, they're drunk, we're at a party, there's noise. Like I tried to justify it. But
did you ever end up speaking to any of them about it, or did you just
at that time, no. At that time, no. The time I decided to confront, that's when one day there was a party I wasn't supposed to go, like I didn't plan it. But I don't know, last minute I went. So I didn't I said when I get there, I will see my boyfriend and I will tell him like I came. And when I got there, they were together.
Ooh.
So that, yeah.
Caught them on the spot.
Yeah, right? On the spot. So that was the moment. Like I didn't.
That was the moment. That was the reveal in which you knew that things were not what they seemed to be.
Yeah,
your best friend
exactly.
was not your best friend, and your boyfriend was not having your best interest in mind. But that's why we want to try and understand. If you can help us to understand just what was going on through your experience, when you saw it the first time, why didn't you confront him? What were the voices in your head saying that prevented you from actually just having a conversation, not accusing, just having a conversation with them?
I literally found every excuse, like, no, the noise, no, like that wouldn't happen, like why they're in front of me also, so it makes no sense. Like I thought it was harmless.
Did you ever think to yourself, I don't want to start maybe drama, like I don't want to like say something or like make it a bigger deal than it is?
Yeah, like I didn't want to confront something that didn't exist and then like to seem the crazy girlfriend or something.
Wow. That's super important, because if you look at part of the idea of realizing the two voices and which one is ultimately your best friend and which one does have your best interest in mind, it's usually the one that is sometimes uncomfortable. Go and have a conversation. There's nothing wrong with having a conversation, saying, this is what I feel, what's going on, is anything going on? Because those internal voices, they have validity, they have truth. A lot of times we don't get necessarily enough time to hear them because we're so used to one voice, which is, I don't want to sound crazy, I don't want to bring up drama, it's too loud, excuses. Those are all keywords for helping us to understand where is our opponent, our soul, our inner voice. It doesn't make excuse. It wasn't making an excuse. Your soul was saying, go check it out. Something's off. I see the energy. It looks a little bit more than just my best friend and my boyfriend. It looks a little bit more than that. So 100%. So those are really important things that we can pick up. And thank you, Ruth, for being open and sharing that situation. I'm sure it wasn't a fun experience.
No.
But Momo, how about you? Did you what with this friendship, did you see it coming? Did you?
I didn't see this specific thing coming, but the guy himself was always more of a like tag along and inviting himself and adding himself more to the group than like felt natural. You know what I mean? It was more like he was pushing to be involved rather than just, like being there and involving himself. As if we were trying to push him away, he felt like he constantly had to do more to hang on, which made us like, it doesn't always feel right when somebody's doing that constantly, right? It feels like they're trying to force it. So for like a long time, it just felt like a weird relationship. Like he was trying to get more out of us than, add to the group,
I'm gonna
in that
pause you
sense.
for a sec. I'm gonna pause you for a sec. Why did you send out the message to your friends? Why did you send your story to your friends as opposed to posting it yourself? Like, why initially when you sent it out, why'd you do it?
So at first I wanted feedback. Like, what do you guys think? Is it scary enough? Is it like entertaining? Da, da, da. I was really just looking for like, friendly feedback. So there was like a few versions of the story. And then I just kind of kept, sending it to them because, well, honestly, I was obviously looking for validation for them to be like, it was a good story. But yeah, I mean, there was also, I was looking for constructive criticism on how to make it better.
It's beautiful because for all of us to know and for all the viewers to know, constructive criticism, let me know if I'm right, Rachel, Mike, constructive criticism is good, but constantly sending
Sometimes
the
it
new
could
story to
hurt.
your friends is not constructive criticism. It's like, give me feedback, I want to change it, but constantly asking, is this story good enough? Is this story good enough? Is this
Yeah.
story good enough? That's definitely not the voice of the soul. That's definitely not the voice of the internal gut feeling. If you pay attention to it, it's not a voice that doubts itself very often, but the best friend or the opponent or the seeming best friend is like, oh, make sure it's good enough. Oh, get this quick fix. And someone's saying, wow, what an entertaining story. It's so great. At the end of the day, that opponent didn't end up helping you because the story ended up getting taken away. But for you, it was like, wow, like I'm not posting this anywhere. It has no audience. So I may as well get audience for my friend. Am I right? Am I right, Mo?
Pretty much.
But
So it's yeah, Mike.
I think it's also about like when it comes to criticism like that, it's really about the person and what he uses with that information. So I think like I personally think like there's nothing really wrong with wanting to do better. It's just about like if you get really obsessed with information, like, oh, let's say someone said your writing is bad. So you can take that information and be like, okay, my writing is bad. I'm going to work on it slowly, slowly. It's a process. Or you could take it and take it to the heart, take it personally, and just not do. So I personally think it's also about how the person takes it and how you see it. That's just my thoughts on it.
Appreciate it.
When you Mike, just to open that discussion a little further, do you think the voice of the opponent, right, this seeming best friend that has your best interest in mind, do you think it would take the criticism to heart and like try and make movies in your mind and how you're not a good writer and how you never will be? Or do you think that's the voice of the soul that's taking the constructive criticism in the way that you mentioned?
I personally think that the voice that takes it to heart, takes it personally, doesn't see the message in what that criticism, you could say, is saying, that's for sure from the opponent. It's for sure from the voice of the opponent, because the voice of the opponent, really, at the end of the day, it's let's say in a basketball game, right? So you're going against a team. Of course, one of the goals of the other team is to make the hoops, ball on you guys. But also they have to distract you. They have to have different mechanisms that you guys will just not focus on the game. And there's different tactics to do that. That's the same thing with the voice of the opponent. So I think when any way that you take information, specifically like criticism like that, and you completely like take it to heart, you get hurt, you get depressed, you build these lies in your head from that I'm this and that, instead of learning from it, that for sure comes from the opponent, for sure.
I'm so happy you brought the basketball game up, because when the Kabbalists speak about the opponent, they use that as an example of literally the perfect idea of what the opponent is. When you look at the basketball game and you look at the opponent, all that opponent is trying to do is to prevent you from scoring, is to prevent you from connecting to your goal, which is winning or putting the ball in the hoop. Kabbalistically, the opponent in this world was designed as the same thing. That voice in our head was designed to prevent us from really revealing our true greatness and our true gifts, but not in a way that we will never reveal them. Every opponent that is better and better and better automatically asks you to bring more of yourself to the table. So for example, if you're playing in high school and you eventually get better and you play in college, and then you go back and you play against high school opponents once you're playing against college opponents, it's not going to be fulfilling when you're a college player to beat a high school player.
Yeah.
Because that won't make you better. It's not fulfilling. You're not playing someone that's on your level. In the same way, Kabbalistically, the opponent is designed to help us to bring the best version of ourselves out. And I think many of us, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, many of us, when we hear that voice in our head and we realize we were fooled, we say, wow, this is such a horrible voice. This is such a terrible voice. I wish this voice never existed. I wish this voice never showed up in my mind. I wish it was just my soul talking. But when you look at it truly, if we didn't have the opponent, we would never be growing. If we didn't have the opponent, we would be never challenged to go to our next level. Ruth would never be challenged to really trust her gut instinct from the onset. Momo would never say, okay, I need to really work on my confidence in my writing so that I can bring it out to the world, asking constructive criticism, but not constantly updating them and sharing my work with the entire world.
One thing to add to that.
Like you have something to say.
I have. I've been waiting for you to round it out. So I read something the other day that was like, anger is just your reaction to being mistreated, right? And so a lot of the time we think anger is like this terrible thing, and like if you're angry, it's a bad thing. I don't think having that reaction and being annoyed and being fed up is a bad thing. It's just what we do with it, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Because there's those of us who say, okay, I'm going to completely give in to the anger, and I'm going to completely give in to the rage, and I'm just going to go off on everybody, right? Whether they're a part of this or not, whether this will help or not, right? You just lose yourself to it. That's one way to not do it. The other way is to completely shut it down, say it's definitely unfounded. I'm being crazy. There's no way anything like this is possible, because if you're thinking it, it means something's up, right? It doesn't just come out of nowhere. So I think it's a matter of finding the balance between the two, knowing like, okay, yes, I see something's wrong. I feel something's wrong, right? But how do I go about fixing it? Do I go crazy and start accusing, or do I ask questions? Be like, guys, listen, it could totally be in my head, but I'm feeling something's off here, right? And if your friend approached you really nicely and asked the same question, like 9 times out of 10, you're gonna be like, no, not really. I don't know, like, but like you'll actually answer them calmly. It'll be a respectful conversation, rather than your friend shows up one day and goes, hey, I know, like, whatever, I know you stole something from me, right? And you're gonna be like, immediate defense mechanism. No way. I don't know what you're talking about. And suddenly you're both screaming at each other and the conversation goes nowhere. Right.
It's beautiful, because that's literally one of the ways to identify the opponent. Is the opponent is always going to get us to think about what is happening right now in the moment. It will always get us to think, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. I just caught them, be reactive, whatever it might be. Like now, not thinking about what will happen if I kick this can down the road in 2 or 3 days. So right now, Ruth was saying, oh, no, leave it. It's going to be okay. Like, I don't need to worry about it. Instead of saying, wait, what will happen if I kick this can down the road? And say, that's one of the things of the opponent, happiness now. And when happiness doesn't happen now, or when we argue, Mike, I saw that you were excited.
Sorry, no, I just, because you said like the opponent makes you focus on the moment, I think it was around that. But isn't it important to be in the moment and take care of the situation? Isn't that something?
Yeah, no, 100%. It's important to be in the moment, but it's not about living in the moment, right? That's one of the ways that we can address the voice of the soul. I'm happy that you pointed that out. It's, I want to be happy in the moment. It's not happiness long term. When I want to be happy in the moment, it's the opponent. I don't want to ruin the party. The party's going great. Everybody's having a good time. I'm not going to be a dramatic girlfriend. No need. Let's just enjoy and stretch out the good time as much as possible. So, Mike, now that you spoke up, we'll call you out. This is we're okay. What about your opponent? Do you have any examples or any stories of where your opponent came out?
Yeah, I mean, I love, all the examples of Ruth, of Momo, of you, David, and I feel like there's a lot of inspiration in that. But I think it's one thing to see how, some friend or someone close even did you wrong. I feel like I could write a whole list of that, but I feel like it's also important to see how maybe I also maybe was toxic, or I, was the voice of the opponent. So there's this story that basically in high school, so what I would do, I'd be like in this science class, and I hated science class. I hated the laboratory. I just liked the coach there, nothing else. So we used to work in groups, and I would build this relationship with the students there. And basically in the beginning, really I did. So then like to manipulate them eventually to do like my homework, to do like the works in those groups. And in the beginning, what my opponent of the voice was saying, you're doing a good thing, you're giving them confidence, you're being a good friend, you scratch their back, then they scratch yours, and it all works, and it's a happy ending. Over time, I started to realize, and I mean, I had that thought, and that voice that really came from that place. But also I had another voice that was more smaller than that opponent, which I believe is the soul voice. And that voice was like throwing out there, like, it's not the right thing. You need to be more real with them. You can't disrespect them that way. But I think in moments like that, it's so easy, and it seems even that the voice of the opponent is bigger than the voice of the light. And it's end of the day, it's really about digging and finding and going to that voice. So eventually the story is that over time I realized it. I apologized, and personally to those students that I was with them. And I mean, today we have a great relationship. One of the kids, shout out Michi, he's my homie. Me and him are also working, as I mentioned before, on this new clothing brand. So now we're business partners. So it's but very powerful, I think. And it's about really knowing your voice of the opponent and how you can be part of that. So yeah.
And once you caught yourself, right? Once you caught yourself and realizing like, oh, you heard this voice in your mind that was, I scratch your back, I scratch their back, they scratch mine. Like, I'll use them, they'll do my homework. Once you caught that, you were able to accept it. You said, look, this is wrong. You completely accepted it. You didn't justify it like, oh, it was their best interest in mind, right? That's another tool of the opponent. The opponent just justifies it. Will say, oh yeah, it's maybe their fault, or this is okay. I should continue to do this because I'm having such a hard day. That's like, oh, I'm your bestie. I have your best interest in mind. But once you really accepted responsibility and you said like, I'm going to go apologize to them and say like, I was basically using you. You ended up really confronting the situation and having a really good relationship with one of the people. So once you start listening to your opponent, it doesn't mean the story's over. Once you start to catch it, hear it, identify it, learn that it doesn't necessarily have your best interest in mind, we'll be able to flip the switch. And that's what we're going to look to do in our episode 3 session. We're going to give you some tools to, again, continue to understand your opponent, but also how to catch it in the moment, identify it, highlight it, and then start to really pay attention to the voice of the soul. How do we switch frequencies from the voice of the opponent to the voice of the soul? We're going to give you a couple tools. So thank you, Momo. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Ruth, for opening up and sharing your stories and your opponents with us. I'm sure many of the viewers that are watching can relate in some way or another to this voice that doesn't necessarily have our best interest in mind. And join us next time to find out how to switch the frequency from the opponent to the soul and really start to become familiar with that voice of the soul. So thank you guys for sharing, and thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in episode 3.